2021 has already seen conclusions to high-profile cases and mysteries, such as the case of Beth Doe, who was found in 1976. Companies like Ortham Inc. are utilizing genome science and DNA databases to identify the nameless and bring criminals to justice. Number 5. In 1980, the residents of Phoenix, Arizona, awoke on Thanksgiving to a bizarre surprise. As they were making their daily commute down the I-17, they spotted something up ahead at mile marker 254. Throughout the night, an unknown person, or persons, had decorated a 20-foot juniper tree and placed it on the side of the road. Standing at 20 feet tall, the tree had been adorned with Christmas balls, stuffed bears, bows, garland, and tinsel. Authorities and residents were left baffled. Who was responsible for adding some Christmas cheer to the side of the I-17? And just how had they managed to do it without being spotted? The Christmas decorations remained on the tree until New Year's Day, when the anonymous decorator took them down. This hadn't just been a one-off deal either. When Thanksgiving of 1981 rolled around, the tree on the I-17 had once again been adorned with Christmas decorations. As the years passed, it became a tradition for families and tourists to stop and take photos with the tree, turning it into a mini landmark for those passing through Phoenix. In recent years, the tree has been caught up in wildfires that have devastated the local area, wiping out much of the grassland and greenery. Miraculously, the Christmas tree has managed to survive, with just a few branches missing. Local authorities and residents are still hunting for the person responsible for bringing them a bit of Christmas cheer each year. In 2020, the mystery tree laid bare, aside from a few balls and an American flag. Many believe that this was intentional to symbolize the year of 2020 and how it was disastrous and empty, while others believe the person responsible may no longer be around to decorate the tree. The mystery remains: who decorates the Christmas tree on I-17, and will it be decorated for 2021? Number 4. In 1944, the residents of Mattoon, Illinois, were whipped up in a frenzy over a man they called the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. In the shadow of World War II, many of the initial reports and victims went unnoticed. However, after 3 attacks had been reported, police and newspapers quickly made the connection and began running with the story. On August 31st, 1944, Urban Rafe was asleep when he was awoken in the early hours of the morning. Rafe told police that he'd woken up because he could smell a strange odor and began vomiting and feeling weak. Rafe's wife was also awoken by the sound of her husband, and she tried to get up to help him to see what was going on, only she was unable to. Mrs. Rafe tried as hard as she could, but she'd been paralyzed from the waist down. She shouted as loud as she could and alerted the neighbors, who called a doctor and the police. Mattoon police were baffled. They had no idea what could have caused the Rafes to be struck down with sickness, and the case was left open, theorizing that they'd possibly left the stove on, causing a gas leak. Just a day later, on September 1st, 1944, Mattoon police received another report. This time, Mrs. Kernsey reported that she'd noticed a strange sweet smell emanating from somewhere in the house. As she went to investigate, she explained that she began to feel sick and that her legs were also paralyzed. Mrs. Kernsey's sister noticed that her bedroom window had been opened and that someone could have pumped the gas through the window. When she returned home, she found a strange man prowling a nearby home and described him as tall, wearing dark clothes and a cap. Carl and Beulah Cords returned to their North 21st Street home on September 5th, 1944, and found a white cloth on their porch. The Cords had heard about the attacks, and Beulah picked up the cloth and smelled it. She was immediately struck with sickness and became temporarily paralyzed. The incident was reported to police, and as each day passed, more and more attacks were reported. On September 12, 1944, 33 people had reported smelling the mysterious gas that they described as a sweet, cheap perfume. with many of them reporting that it had flooded rooms of their homes and afflicted them with paralysis, nausea, and weakness. These victims also reported that when they woke up during the attack, they saw a dark, shadowy figure escaping through a window or a nearby door. Police believed that the motive was robbery. However, no victims reported that anything was missing from their homes. Mr. and Mrs. Kernsey were considered wealthy and reported that nothing valuable had been taken. Over the years, the state police and FBI have investigated the case of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, but have been unable to pinpoint any suspects. Most of the suspects were women, leading authorities at the time to brush it off as mass hysteria and claim that the women were insane. Many have pointed out that most of the victims would have been women since it was 1944 and most men were away fighting in the war. Investigators who have re-examined the case believed that it was not a hoax or a case of mass hysteria, but that the small community of Mattoon did have a criminal among them. It's possible that in 2022, new evidence or testimonies may be uncovered and we may finally crack the case of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Number 3. 38-year-old Mary Bararako was last seen by her daughters on August 19, 1984. Mary's daughters told investigators that they were extremely close, and it was out of character for her to not call them. So when they didn't hear from her by the 31st, they called the police. When speaking to Mary's estranged husband, Dominique Bararako, he claimed that he had last seen Mary on August 20th. Dominique and Mary were in the middle of a turbulent breakup, and Mary had recently discovered that Dominique had had yet another affair. She confided in her family that she had plans to divorce him in the coming months, as he'd been violent and abusive towards her throughout their marriage. Dominique claims that on August 20th, the pair met to have an informal discussion about their divorce, and he'd offered her a settlement between $100,000 and $250,000 in exchange for her leaving the family home. It's unknown whether Mary accepted these terms, but according to Dominique, she did, and she packed all of her things and left the house, and this was the last time that he ever saw her. As previously mentioned, when Mary's daughters hadn't heard from her by August 31st, they reported her missing to the police, who launched an investigation. They found that Dominique's story of events changed while they were questioning him. He told them two different stories. The first was that Mary had taken the agreed settlement money and moved out of the Wakeman Hill home when he wasn't there. And the second story was that they'd sat down, discussed the divorce terms, and then she packed her things and left while he was still in the home. Police were immediately suspicious of Dominique, and upon searching the home, they found that Mary's wedding ring and car keys were neatly placed on the kitchen counter. Her 1982 Chevrolet Cavalier was still in the driveway as well, with a broken window on the driver's side. Dominique could not account for any of these items and did not share with police how Mary had removed her items from the home without using her car. There was no evidence that Dominique had given Mary any money, and he claimed that he'd given it to her in cash, which has never been located. For years, Mary's daughters wondered what had happened to their mother, telling local newspapers that she would never just up and leave without telling them. One of her daughters had just given birth, and Mary was said to have been a wonderful grandmother who cared deeply for her family. In 1985, Dominique initiated a divorce because he had abandoned his wife, and this was granted, and soon after, he married another woman who'd moved into the family home just days after Mary was reported missing. 6 years later, in 1990, the Bararako family were shocked to hear that Mary's case had been upgraded to homicide. Police had received an anonymous tip that Mary's disappearance was orchestrated by the Hells Angels gang, and that Dominique had paid them to take care of her as she was planning to go to the police and report him for illegal activities. Nothing further came from this tip. However, in 2013, Dominique was sentenced to 7 years in prison for attempting to bribe a judge who was involved with the jury into Mary's disappearance, offering him $100,000 to either terminate the investigation or omit evidence that may have incriminated him. Mary Bararako is described as a white female with brown hair and brown eyes. She was last seen in Sherman, Connecticut, and if alive today, she would be 74 years old. She's described as 5'7", 145 pounds, and has an appendectomy scar. If you have any information about the disappearance of Mary Bararako, you're urged to contact the Connecticut State Police at 860-685-8000. Number 2. 19-year-old Mary Frances Gregory left her Ontario home on February 15, 1978. She said her goodbyes to her family and told them that she planned to make her way down to California for a holiday. She told them that she would be traveling with a male companion and that she would be in touch with them soon. According to Mary's male travel companion, they traveled through Canada, and on February 18th, they crossed the US border into New York. From New York, they drove through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and finally into Nevada. This is where the two split paths, and the male companion dropped Mary off at a bus station in Las Vegas on February 28th. The companion told investigators that Mary had asked him to drop her off there, as she would make the final journey to California on her own. Her family waited and waited, but they never received a call from her, nor any postcards or letters. Mary's family quickly realized that something was wrong and contacted the appropriate authorities to report her missing. There are 2 active missing persons cases for Mary, one in Ontario and one in California. Police launched an investigation into the sudden disappearance of the 19-year-old after speaking with her family, and from the male companion, they learned that Mary had been carrying luggage. Despite numerous searches, though, the luggage has never been found. Mary's family hope and pray that she is still out there and believe she suffered from memory loss due to an accident or mental health break. If alive today, Mary would be 63 years old. She's described as a white female, 5'3", 111 pounds, with dark blonde hair and hazel eyes. On her Doe network page, Mary is listed as having a mole on her waist and is nearsighted. Fingerprints are not available. However, DNA is available via UNT, and partial dental records are also available. It's been noted that Mary's dental records are partial as they only contain records of 10 teeth, and she previously had a noticeable overbite that had been rectified. If you have any information about the disappearance of Mary Frances Gregory, you're asked to contact the Ontario Police at 705-746-4225. Number 1. In September of 1977, the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department was engaged in a high-speed chase on a highway in Delafield, Wisconsin. The chase had started after the deputy was parked on the highway as a car driven by a young man sped past him. The deputy followed behind the car and signaled for the young man to pull over. However, this was unsuccessful. The young man continued speeding, leaving the highway and getting onto Golf Road and SS in Delafield. As the young man approached the intersection of these roads, he failed to notice that it was a sharp turn ahead, causing his car to spin out into the nearby woods. Realizing what had happened, the deputy screeched to a halt and ran to find the young man, only to find the car upside down and the man 25 feet away. The deputy radioed for backup and requested that EMTs attend the scene immediately. Unfortunately, the man was unresponsive and declared dead at the scene. The young man was taken to the Waukesha County morgue in hopes that they could find his identity and notify his next of kin. Despite searching and making public appeals, nobody came forward to claim him, and from then on, he's been known as the Delafield County John Doe. During their investigation, police found that the car that he'd been driving was stolen from Illinois, giving them renewed hope that he could be from Illinois. They also found items inside of the car that bore the name John. His Doe network profile states that 3 sets of keys, several bags of women's clothing, and a lighter with the inscription "To John, Love Laurie" was found inside the car. It's unknown whether these belonged to the John Doe or the person he'd stolen the car from. The Delafield John Doe is described as a white male between 20 and 30 years old, 5'8" to 6'1", and 145 to 170 pounds. He had brown hair and a military-style cut and brown hazel eyes. The coroner noted that he had a large amount of chest hair but no facial hair. He was found wearing a blue, white, and gray long-sleeve shirt, black and white Wishbone brand sports jacket with a black fur collar, and gray and white checkered trousers, as well as green jockey shorts. If you have any information about the Delafield John Doe, you're asked to contact the Waukesha County Medical Examiner's Office at 262-548-7575, quoting case number 8616. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.